So I've been thinking a lot about getting older recently. I'm turning 35 this year. And man, that's weird to say. It's weird to say that I'm approaching my mid-30s. Some would say I'm in my mid-30s here at 34. And something that I wish I would have known when I was younger, when I was all full of hot piss and vinegar, as they say, is that the price you pay for doing something or wronging someone or doing something wrong or doing something you regret or something that brings you shame or whatever it might be is that you have to live with that for life. And when I was younger, it's still a common saying, people say, oh, I don't give a fuck, or fuck that or fuck them or whatever it might be. And that's all fine, when you're younger. And in some situations, that's fine in general. But when you get older and you start to reflect on, who you were and some of the things that you did and some of the people you wronged and some of the ways that you handled situations that you regret and that have brought you shame, and you begin to process them in a new light, in a more mature light. And I have done a lot of things in my life that, naturally I'm not proud of. There's a lot of things that I carry with me on a daily basis that I wish I could go back and change. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who would say the same. But with that being said, I had that same mentality when I was younger. Oh, I don't care, screw them, whatever. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that the price of that mentality is having to live with that. And it's tough because you carry these things with you. You carry your wrongdoings with you. You carry that with you for life. You carry everything that you've ever done, wrong, good, bad, everything in between with you for life, man. And that's not the price that I thought that I was going to have to pay. You think, oh, whatever, just write it off, you forget about it, but you don't. And then, as I said earlier, you begin to process things in a new light. As you get older, you get a little bit more wisdom underneath your belt. Goodness gracious, going through downtown LA right now, it's crazy. A cop car in front of me, but maybe y'all can hear that, maybe you can't. But needless to say, I've been reflecting on that recently as I've been alive for going on 35 years now, and there's a lot of things, like I said, that I've done that I wish I could go back and undo, or a lot of things that I've said that I wish I could go back and unsay, and I would have made a different decision in some of these times. And with that being said, these things have caused growth. These things have caused reflection. These things, you begin to think, well, the thing to say is, well, you're human. And yeah, you're right, I am human. But, usually when you do something wrong, you know that you're doing something wrong. I don't believe that people don't have a conscience. I don't believe that people are unaware that they're doing something wrong when they do it. In fact, I refuse to believe that, man. Everybody has that inner voice, and we as human beings innately know what we're doing is right or what we're doing is wrong. And I knew every single time I was doing something wrong that I was doing something wrong, but I just chose not to care. And as I mentioned earlier, you get older and then all of a sudden you do care, but it's too late, and those things can never change. And with that being said, when I was younger, I didn't really respect myself. I didn't have a whole lot of respect for myself, and I used to smoke and smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. I used to drink. I used to do drugs. I used to steal. I used to lie. I used to screw people over. I used to gossip. I used to do all this stuff. And in the moment, as a young person, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a fuck it mentality, whatever. But as you get older, I have watched people pass away from specific kinds of cancer that were in their late 20s and early 30s. You get to an age where it's like all of the stuff that you've done and a lot of the stuff that you've consumed in your body has now started to take full effect at this age, and it shows. I'm very grateful that over the past decade, I started working out and really started monitoring, not to the extent that quite frankly I do now, but started monitoring what I put in my body. I don't smoke anymore. I don't drink anymore. And in fact, on the 15th of this month, I will have been, 15th of February, which has already passed, but on the 15th of March, I will have been 6 months sober, which for me is the longest I've ever been sober since I was 16 years old. 16, which means that I've spent more of my life not sober than I have sober. And I don't know, man, like that kind of bothers me to speak out loud when I go home and I see my family and I see photos of myself when I was a kid and this, that, and the other, and I remember being that age naturally, and I'll never cuss, I'll never do this, I'll never do that, and then life happens, and before you know it, you're doing all of the stuff that you said you would never do, and a lot of worse things. And as I just mentioned, for over half my life, the majority of my life has spent being not sober. Now, I'm very fortunate in saying that I never got addicted to anything or never struggled with alcoholism or anything that I've really had to fight as far as addiction is concerned, but I've always been, whether or not it's been smoking weed or drinking or whatever it's been, I've always chosen that path over the path of sobriety. And for the first time in my life, and at the 15th of next month, I will have been sober for 6 months, which is the longest I've ever been sober since I started doing these things. And when I say that, the fact of the matter is, as I just mentioned, I haven't ever been addicted to anything heavy, and I've had a lot of friends that have gone down that path, but it's strange, man, because I'm at a point in my life where I've survived those things. I've experienced more than enough of those things. Every drug you can think of, with the exception of putting a needle in my arm and fentanyl and meth and stuff. But everything else, I've definitely dabbled in a couple of times. Bro, like I just made it to the point in my life where I don't want to do that anymore, and I feel really blessed to have made it to that point without any addictions. But also, like, what took me so long? What took me so long? What took me 20 years of chasing something that just left me more empty, left my bank account more empty, caused me internal pain, caused me a lot of fighting with my parents and everyone, bro, like fighting internally. What took me so long? So, to make a long story short, I was in Thailand a few months ago, like over half a year ago actually, and I got pulled over while motorcycling, and they breathalyzed me right on the side of the road, like in Bangkok, out of nowhere. And I hadn't been drinking, I hadn't been doing anything, and so naturally, like, I passed. But the night before, I had been drinking, and I had been drinking I'd had a couple of drinks, and I was driving around. I wasn't drunk or anything, but I'd had a couple of drinks while I was downtown, and had that been the night prior that I was stopped, I don't know what would have happened. I've been extorted out of money in these countries, and I don't have a say-so over there. And I thought to myself, like, hey man, like maybe I pull over and I blow in this breathalyzer, and then all of a sudden, like, hey bro, you're gonna pay us 20 grand right now or your life is over, or whatever, wherever the brain runs, whatever could happen, because like I said, I've been extorted out of money and stuff in Vietnam and all these other countries, and it's whatever they say goes. And after I got pulled over, I turned around, I told my girlfriend, I was like, I'll never drink again. Like, I'll never drink again. That was it. That's all that needed to happen for me to never drink again. And I haven't had a drink since. And I was never crazy about drinking anyway, and so it's been relatively easy to rid my life of that. But I was always a pretty big weed smoker. You know, I always liked to smoke weed and this, that, and the other. But I just don't care anymore. And like I said, I wish it hadn't have taken 20 years, man, because that's a lot of smoke in the lungs. You know, that's a lot of damage to the body, a lot of damage to the heart, a lot of damage to the mind. But like, I am so grateful that I've made it to that point where it's just like, I don't need that anymore. I don't care about it, and I don't want to. And on the flip side, if I did want to, I would, but I just don't. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in that, from the fact that I haven't been addicted, but I can make that choice now. So I just, took us on a little trip from downtown Los Angeles back here to Hollywood. I'm curious to see what this camera looks like. It's, I think I'm going to sell it tomorrow on Facebook. So pretty crazy to have a camera strapped to my hood that costs more than the car that you're seeing me drive in, based off of a $35 suction cup that I got off Amazon that I just drove down the freeway in. So I'm eager to look at this footage, but the price that you pay is, you have to live with it here. And so that's what I've been thinking about recently. And I just wanted to drop this on the tube, and if somebody watches it, they watch it. If not, I got this to reflect on. So we're pulling up to my apartment, and oddly enough, man, I'm moving up in the world because I'm moving out of this apartment tomorrow and moving to the Arts District in downtown Los Angeles. I'm very excited. And new job, new place to live, and we're gonna figure some things out. So like I said, if somebody watches this video, that's great. If they don't, that's great too. And man, I'm Josh. Chime in with me, all right? I'll be eager to hear some stories about your lives. All right, I'm out. Thank you so much. Oops.